your homework last night was on sine functions. Now these are the 3 rules. What I did is I highlighted the important parts of these that are going to help us graph, okay? The first thing we need to do is identify the amplitude and the period. Period is 2 pi over b. You will need to know these formulas. They will not be given to you. The second formula is 4 times b. That's going to tell us how many equal sections we're going to break our x-axis into from 0 to 2 pi. And the period divided by 4 is going to tell us the distance between those 2 sections, okay? So, or between each of those sections. So let's go over, would y'all like to go over number 4, or you feel good with that one? Good cheat. Okay, let's go to number 7. Number 7, and I have this here so we can see both of these at the same time. Draw a card, please. Sam, on number 7, what is our, what's the amplitude? -1. Do you guys agree with Sam that the amplitude is -1? Well, if we look right here, Sam, the amplitude A, the amplitude is equal to the absolute value of A, right? So it's 1. And what is the period, Sam? To find the period, it's 2 pi over b, which we see right here. And what is our b, Sam? 2. So it's 2 pi over 2, which is just pi. So what we're saying, we know we're going from 0 to 2 pi, right? So we know 0 is here and we know 2 pi is here, correct? Now if we're going from 0 to 2 pi, card please. Alexia, if we're going from 0 to 2 pi, how many cycles are there? Okay, 8 is the answer to a different question. But you're right, the next thing we'd want to do is break this up into 8 sections, right? But when I say cycles, I mean like how many times is our function going to repeat? You know what I mean? Like how many? All right, 2. Because remember that B is the number of the cycles, the number of cycles we have. So if B is 2, that means we have 2 cycles. Which makes sense because it's going to take us pi to go one cycle and then another pi to go the other cycle. Now, Alexia, we want to break this up into 8. How did you get 8, Alexia? 4 times b. Good. And what is b here? 2, and that gives us 8. Raise your hand if you don't know where I got 4 times 2. It's okay. You can raise your hand if you don't understand. I'd be happy to help. Okay. This means now we're breaking this up into 8 equal sections, right? And the reason we're doing that is because each cycle is going to be divided into 4 different parts, right? And since we have 2 cycles, that would make sense that we break 2 pi up into 8 parts. So that's the first, we did the first thing to find the period. The second thing, we divided our, from 0 to 2 pi, we found out how many equal sections we're going to have. And then we need to identify our scale. How much are we increasing by? What is the answer there? Pi over 4? How'd you get pi over 4? You took your period, which is pi, and then you divided it by 4, and that gives you pi over 4 here. So, card please. Samantha, what would the next one be? Pi over 2, which is 2 pi over 4, right, which is equal to pi over 2. I'm glad that you reduced that. You don't have to, but that would be awesome if you did. Continue. Good. 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4, which is pi. Good. 3 pi over 2, which is 6 pi over 4, right? And good. Okay, card, please. Jada, what is this number right here? What is this number right here, Jada? Very good. Jada, where do I start my first point? 0, 0. Very good. Card. John, I understand. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. John, our next point, where do you think it would be? Just guess. Okay, Usually our graph is going to go up, right? So it would be here. But John, do you see how there's a negative out front? That tells us our next point is right here. Do you see that? All right, and then we're going to go back to the middle, and then to the top, and then to the middle, and then down, middle, top, middle, and then back to the middle. Do you see that? So let's graph this. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the next thing I want to go over one more example. Let's look at a problem like, let's look at number 16. Okay? On number 16 card, please. Patricia, on number 16, what is the amplitude? Cool, and it's actually positive 3 because the absolute value, right? And then what's the period?
Then it's 2 pi divided by.
Okay, the period is
Divided by 1/2.
2 pi divided by 1/2, okay? Now, I'm not even mad if you don't know how to calculate this by hand, but you need to use your calculator if you don't know how to do this by hand. If you're using a yellow one, 2 divided by 1/2, go to math, enter, enter, okay? Which I guess you won't have to do that because you won't get a fraction, but let's talk about this. How would we multiply this? 2 pi over 1. Now we're multiplying times the reciprocal of this, which is 2 over 1. So that would just give us 4 pi. Okay, now think of it, and I want you to actually think about this. If our period is 4 pi, right? If our period is 4 pi, how many cycles are we going to have? Raise your hand if you can tell me. Raise your hand if you can tell me. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Can anybody else tell me? Anybody? Raise your hand. Okay, Sam, how many? All right, if our period is 2 pi, how many cycles are we going to have, Sam? Okay, Daniel, how many cycles? We're only going to have half of a cycle. Okay, Daniel, how did you know that? 4 pi is twice 2 pi. So if it's going to take us a total of 4 pi's to make one circle, but we're only allowed to go 2 pi's, I'm sorry, I said one circle. If it's going to take us 4 pi's to go one whole cycle, but we can only go 2 pi's, that's only half a cycle. Remember, we're only allowed to go from 0 to 2 pi. Okay? Another way you can know is you could look at your formula where it tells you that B is the number of cycles. And what is B here? 1/2, so that's half a cycle. 2 different ways you could look at it. Do you see that? So, card please. Alyssa. How many sections am I breaking this up into? The number of values that we're going to label here is what? What? It's 4 times B. Right, so what is B here, Alyssa? Yeah. Alyssa, what's B? Alyssa, he's incorrect. Don't listen to him. Alyssa, what is B? B is the number in front of theta, which is 1/2. So this is 4 times 1/2, right? And 4 times 1/2 is 2. So we break this up into 2. We already have 1. So we have 1, 2 sections. Do you see that? Now, in order for us to determine, we could probably just already know that this is pi, because we cut this in half, but let's calculate it using pi divided by 4. So we have 4 pi divided by 4, and that's just what? Pi. Good. This is 3 and negative 3. We know our first point is going to be at 0, 0. Now, our first point's at 0, 0. Now, next point is going to be here or here? Bottom, right? And then, right. Do you see how this is only half of our cycle? All right, if our cycle were to continue, I'll just draw, I'm running out of room, but the full cycle would be another 2 pi this way. Do you see that? But it's not. It's just half the cycle. It's just this half of the cycle. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. You got it? Okay. Are we ready to move on? Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is okay, so let's look at the graph of cosine of theta. So we're going to graph this just like we graphed the sine of theta yesterday. So we need to see our little unit circle over here. That's the worst circle ever. Okay.
Wait, do we have to draw the unit circle right? What? Yes. Oh. We have to draw the unit circle to actually.
The coordinates of this point are 1, 0. The coordinates of this point are 0, 1. This one is negative 1, 0. And this one is 0, negative 1. So remember we looked at this yesterday. If this is 2 pi, the halfway through that would be pi. This would be pi over 2. And right here is 3 pi over 2. So we can say this is 1 and this is negative 1. All right, so on our graph card, please. Miguel, what is the cosine of 0, Miguel? The cosine of 0, so if we go to 0 degrees right here, remember cosine is the first coordinate, so what would it be, Miguel? 1. So that's a point right here. Thank you. Card. I'm sorry? Chloe. She's next one. Caroline is not here. Next one. I'm sorry? Okay. What is the cosine of pi over 2? This is pi over 2 here, right? The cosine of pi over 2 is 0. So at pi over 2, y is 0. Do you guys see that? Do you see how I'm getting these values? All right. Sir? Yes, sir.
Is that a point right there on the 1?
Yes, that point 0, 1. Because when our theta is 0, y is 1, right? Because this is equal to what is the value? What's the cosine of pi? Let me write that out for you. Y is equal to the cosine of pi. Negative 1. Okay. Right here, negative 1. You were correct. Card, please. Mally Claire, what is the cosine of 3 pi over 2? 3 pi over 2 is right here. The cosine is 0. Very good. And Mally Claire, what about the cosine of 2 pi? I'm sorry? 1 is correct. Good. So we go back to 1. Okay, so we have this graph right here. Let me sketch this for you. Oh, I graphed that one wrong, didn't I? It should be up here. I'm sorry. All right. So, do you see how I sketched that? Instead of starting in the middle, we start at the top. Do you see? Now, if this were negative, cosine, guess where we would have started? At the bottom at negative 1 right here, correct?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with our amplitude and period. So let's look at example number 2. All right, card please. Matt, in example number 2, what is the amplitude? I'm sorry, Matt? 2. Very good, because of this 2, right? And what's the period, Matt? The period is 2 pi divided by b. And what is b, Matt? No, a is the amplitude. B is the number in front of theta. Matt, you're correct. The b is 2, and b is 2 because of this 2. This is b, all right, right here. This is b, and what is this one right here? This one is a, okay? So b is 2, so that's 2 pi divided by b, which is 2, and that gives us, what's our period actually going to be, Matt? Our period is just pi. Very good. Okay, here you go. Will you take out your homework, please? I also need 1 to 45 of the exact values. Homework. All right. So let's continue. Card, please. Griffin. Griffin, how do I decide how many intervals I'm breaking this up into? B times 4. Okay. Very good. And what is B? 2. That's going to give us 8, correct? So I'm just going to break this up into 8 equal pieces. This is 2, and we have a negative 2 here because that's our amplitude, right? Card, please. What? Anaya. What is this first hash mark going to be? What is this? How do we remember? Pi over 8. How'd you get pi over 8? Is this from 0 to pi, or is it from 0 to... It's 0 to 2 pi, right? So it's not actually, I mean, in order, if we forgot how to do this, in order to find this, we can just take our period and divide it by 4, see? So what's our period, Anaya? Pi. And if we divide pi by 4, what do we get? Oh, pi over 4, right? So it's actually pi over 4. Or what you could have also done, Anaya, is you could have divided 2 pi by 8, and that would give you pi over 4, okay? So this is 1 pi over 4, this is 2 pi over 4. This is, which one is this, Anaya? 3 pi over 4? If we end up with something that's not 2 pi, then we made a mistake. We ended up with 8 pi over 4, which is equal to 2 pi. So we're good. Card, please. Did you say Hala? Hala? Where do we start? Start from 0, 0. We would usually start from 0, 0, right? But this is cosine, so it's different. It's not sine. Remember? Let me show you this. So where do we actually start with a cosine? Right, we start here. Okay, and remember, we kind of talked, these are like burpees. Up, middle, down, middle, up, middle, down, middle, up. Do you see? Okay, so let's sketch this. All right, any questions? Okay, let's do one more. Do you all good on that one? Okay, let's look at all right, let's look at this one, number 9 on the back. Okay, on number 9, what's the amplitude is what? 3, very good, because this is A, which is the absolute value of that is our amplitude, which is 3. What is the period? It's 2 pi over B. And what is B?
2.
Here B is 2, so it would just be pi. To find out how many pieces we break it up into, we multiply 4 times B. And what is B?
2.
So that would give us 8. Right? Did y'all see that? Now, this is 3, and this is negative 3. Correct? What do we do next?
We write 2 pi.
Okay,
You can only go
2 pi here, right? Very good. And we divide our period by 4, right?
Yeah,
What's our period? Pi, so we're actually going by what?
pi over 4.
Good, and it's not always going to be pi over 4. It just happens to be in these two examples. It won't always be pi over 4. Please remember that.
Sometimes it'll be pi over 8.
Sometimes it'll be pi over 8. Sometimes it might just be pi.
Yeah.
It always changes. It just depends on what the period is. 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, 5.
Pi over
Good,
6 pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 2.
good,
7 pi over 4.
good. Okay, so card please. David. Now, David, do we start here at 3? Do we start at 0? Or David, do we start at negative 3? Okay, you say 3, but let me tell you this. Do you see how this is negative? So if it's negative, guess what? We actually flip it, right? Does that make sense, David? Since this is negative, guys, we're actually starting down here. So we go down, middle, up, middle, down, middle, up, middle, down. Do y'all see that?
Yeah.
All right, so let's start graphing this. All right, any questions here? Okay, your homework is 1 through 8. 1 through 8. Any questions? Remember your test is on Tuesday. You still have 3 minutes, so I would like for you guys to continue working.